I am going to call this meeting to order of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, held hybrid in city council chambers and virtually. If we could do a roll call and just state your name, and we can start with Matt again.
Matthew Alston.
Christy Anderson.
Najla Routsong.
Colin Murphy.
Nolan Hendon.
Sarah Congress.
Joseph Winia.
Matt Flaherty.
Emma Ferguson.
Alicia Hardy.
David Maynor.
Then Najla, if you can do the approval of the agenda. So we just need someone to make a motion.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve our agenda from last month?
I move that we approve today's agenda as distributed.
Second.
That's passed. I will now, the agenda for this meeting. Now I will hear a motion to approve the minutes from last month. Wait, should I?
Just a quick point of order. For approval of agenda and minutes, which are fairly routine, unanimous consent might be appropriate, but we should at least announce that that's the method. You should say something like, if there are no objections,
Right.
the minutes will be approved or the agenda will be approved by unanimous consent. Alternatively, we could just do a roll call vote.
Okay, so let's go back to approval of the agenda. I had a second. Does anyone have any objections? Hearing no objections, that is passed. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any objections?
I do have a correction that I would like to make. I noticed that in the attendance, I was not listed as either present or absent, and I was present. That's my only correction.
Thanks, Joseph. Anything else? Okay, the meetings are approved. Do we need to vote on updating them to add Joseph's name?
Again, sort of minor points could be approved essentially by unanimous consent, so it'd be silly, I think, for someone to object to Joseph's name being added, but if we want to be formal about it, you could say something like, if barring any objections, the minutes are approved as amended.
Any objections to amending the minutes to add Joseph's name to the attendance? So passed. Okay. Is anyone here from the public, and would you like to make a comment?
I think we have someone here on Zoom, so let me check.
Did you say you're checking on Zoom? Okay.
Chair Ritson?
Yeah.
One more note while we're waiting on that. It occurred to me that now that we're in person, voice votes on things like that would also be appropriate. All in favor, aye, that sort of thing. We stopped doing that in times of Zoom because
Right.
the impossibility of hearing ayes and nays adequately. But that's another way instead of unanimous consent. That might be a little, that I think is the way BCOS used to function with motions like that. Be all in favor, all opposed. So just a suggestion.
Okay, thanks. Good to know.
I do want to add to that while we're waiting. And I think according to Indiana state law for the adoption of hybrid meetings, roll call votes are still required for that particular case.
Okay,
I can check for the
we're
exact-
trying to respond to a raised hand in the chat from Don. Don, if you have a comment, please unmute yourself.
I believe I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I believe I'm unmuted. Hello? 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 Can you hear me?
Hi, Don, we can see that you're talking, but you're really quiet, so 1 second. Don, can you repeat your comment?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
We can
go
hear you now.
ahead. I can go ahead, right?
Yes, we can hear you
Can
now.
you hear me? Okay. I wanted to bring attention again to the effort that we're making towards on the Environmental Commission towards the Wildlife Corridor project, and also pointing out the progress that's already been made by MC Iris and the Parks Department, and also the Tree Commission. I may have forgotten to send to Lauren the MC Iris February notes and minutes. I meant to say the annual report, which gives the metrics for some of the work that MC Iris has done in the community, in particular in the city and city parks, working with city parks, and removing invasive plants and also planting native plants and replacement, both on the city and also trying to help people in the community with our last year's effort of removing winter creeper. Part of the reason I want to bring this to your attention is also the issue that draw attention to the fact that the Environmental Commission is also, like MC Iris, trying to do things both for the environment and also with a social fairness. And particularly this year's invasive plant is the Callery pear. And Callery pear is extremely aggressive, and sustainability is, to me, part of environmental science in general. And one of the concerns about Callery pear is the potential that it has for destroying our native forests and green canopy, which is critical if Bloomington and Monroe County are going to contribute to climate mitigation and protection of biodiversity. If you end up with a invasive basically forcing out the diversity that exists with a natural system, the existing natural system of which is typically very complex as far as both the animal and plant species. When you have a monoculture of plants, if anything goes wrong, the whole system can crash. Plus the impact of as an example, many of our invasives our native wildlife will not eat. So wanting to try to bring this to your attention, and also with MC Iris and Parks, and all of us have been looking at how to make it, because particularly Callery pear, in my neighborhood, there are some very tall trees of examples of Callery pear. So we're talking about more than $1,000 for many of the trees to be removed from people's property. The city is focusing largely on removing the well over 1,000 Callery pears that have been either planted by the city or on city properties. And with budget situation, they can only do maybe, it'll take us more than 10 years to get rid of what we know of now. And the fact is that as in parks like Southeast Park and Cascades and Griffey, we're finding, as well as the city's, the Leonard Springs nature area, they're already inviting city properties. So the numbers keep growing. And so we're trying to set up with a system, and we're going to probably tomorrow discuss at this month's MC Iris meeting the more on the plans to try to figure out ways to make this, to help people that have limited resources. We've worked in the past with the hand department, housing and neighborhood development. We've worked with the neighborhood associations, and many of us do volunteer help with neighbors and people that have asked for help that cannot afford, let's say, to have a landscaper or physically do the work themselves. So we have a strong commitment to the social justice issue on all environmental programs. So also pointing out is that the opportunity for volunteering today when I opened my weekly IU Concerned Scientists newsletter, there was a plug for the Concerned Science community to volunteer. And it's a good way to find out whether you even have invasive species, learn about the problem, to work with the Parks Department with weed wrangles. We have first, this last Saturday was at Griffey. I think we had about 50 community volunteers that showed up to help. And all of this effort has helped the city and the Hoosier National Forest and removing invasive plants from our ecosystem. So if any of you are interested, please go to the MC Iris or Park website. We also have weekly events currently at Latimer Woods, Lower Cascades, and there's some others I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyhow, we would appreciate any additional people joining us in this volunteer effort. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don, for your comment.
Is there anyone else from the public? Anyone on Zoom that you can see? Okay. Moving on to report from acting chair. I'm just going to give a plug for our Just Transition event taking place next Wednesday at the Monroe County Public Library from 6 to 8. This is like the first big because like public listening event that I've ever experienced since I've been on the commission, which is a few years. So I don't know if there's been one before that, but it's pretty, we're super excited about it and really looking forward to hearing from our community members on these issues on which we're also passionate about as well. So again, next Wednesday, 6 to 8, please register if you have not already and invite anyone in the community who you think may attend. And you can attend in person or on Zoom, that event, similar to this meeting. Next, I just wanted to also mention that we do have officer elections on the agenda for tonight, and so I would encourage everyone to consider volunteering to serve in an officer position if you're able. because obviously not everyone's going to be able because of time restrictions or whatever, or ability or other reasons. And so for that reason, I encourage everyone who is able to volunteer. And I think Lauren will probably walk us through that when we get there. But the positions are secretary, treasurer, co-chairs, and co-chairs or vice chair, chair. And normally we leave that up to the people who want to be in that position to decide which way it'll be, whether it'll be equal co-chairs or a vice chair and chair. And that's all from me. I would now move on to the report from Lauren.
Okay, thank you, Nejla. I'm going to start with a general update about item about potential merger between Environmental Commission and Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, which is that there hasn't been any change in status on that since last month, but I will keep you posted if there's any activity either initiated by council or the mayor's office. As of right now, it's a recommendation, And then the next item that I wanted to mention was that next meeting, I would like to add to the agenda a demo of a climate action plan engagement platform that's been in the process for a while. And in preparation for that, I was going to pull up on these video screens an example of another community that's working on and has already set up a similar platform, just so that you can know what to expect when we have the presentation next month. Oops. So this is the city of Fort Collins. Can you see that? Yeah. So it's on the video screen over there. This is the city of Fort Collins, and they are working with the same group that set up this page. On the top is kind of the name of their initiative, Shift. And if you are a resident or a group, you can make an account on this website, and it tracks live how many households have participated and the tons of CO2 towards a reduction goal. This is important in getting engagement on the climate action plan by tracking which actions individuals have taken and generating momentum around plan goals. So if you click on any individual action here, basically citizens or groups can choose. It shows whether it's an easy task and estimated savings per year for those that are relevant. So for example, if I were to click on installing smart power strips, and I had an account, then you would be able to check that out. So basically for each action, there's an information page, and then there will be Bloomington specific resources at the bottom. And I think this will be a great way that the commission can engage people across Bloomington with the plan actions, and we can look at what's generated more activity. So there's a variety of different options, and it will be customized for Bloomington specifically. So Community Climate Solutions is the group out of Palo Alto that's setting up the site. And they will have someone come to our meeting in April to show the progress on the engagement platform. So a few of you have asked me how this group can engage with the plan, and I think this is one way that we can keep tabs on activity across Bloomington and encourage people to take action in ways that they can. It's also obviously more complicated actions, but more impactful, like getting solar in your home, so there's more points associated with taking action on those in the page. So while the plan itself has a lot of different actions, not all of them are applicable for an individual, and this will be focused more towards what any one person in Bloomington can do to support the broader community goals. And then I just wanted to provide an update that I will be providing an update to council on April 20th. And that is part of the biannual update to council on progress on the climate action plan. It will also be roughly the 1-year anniversary of its passage. So it will be an opportunity to brief council on what has happened with activity on the plan in the broader community, as well as City of Bloomington progress, and kind of give a preview of what else is ahead until the next update, which will be in roughly October. So there will be a written report, and I will circulate that all to you in advance of that meeting, and we can talk about it a little bit more at the next BCOS meeting as well. Also, later in the agenda, there's an update about a new composting program, but I will wait until that point in time. So if anyone else had anything that they had a question for me, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the platform also going to show our progress towards meeting the goals of the climate action plan? Or is this just for individual actions?
So it shows progress in terms of tonnage. There's a broader dashboard that will show the broader community progress. So while individuals, like for instance, so if there's 1,500 tons of CO2 and we know we need to reduce a certain total aggregate as a community, then the broader dashboard tracking the plan goals will kind of link and interface with this. So this is more like a directly an engagement platform rather than a tracking tool.
My question was similar. So I like the idea of the engagement dashboard. So there is also going to be like a second tracking tool so we can measure metrics towards like those baseline 2018 goals and whether we're on track to meet the 2030. Okay, great.
Is this a website and an app, or just a website? I ask because there's an app called 2030 or Bust, which does something similar, but it's not specific to a city. It's just specific to the individual.
I'm not familiar with the 2030 or Bus site, but I'll check it out and see. It's probably similar. I mean, there's a lot of different municipalities that are trying to figure out what their engagement strategy is in relation to their plans. So this is one way that I spoke to some of the staff in Fort Collins, and they are able to do challenges through the site. So I think there's a potential, like for instance, later in the year to do a joint community campus challenge to drive engagement also with students as well. So I'm looking forward to this being much more interactive than a plan is, while also facilitating and tracking action in a tangible sense. So we'll see how it goes. Different cities are using it for different reasons, and some are using it to do short bursts of challenges to try to get people engaged around certain actions in certain months as well. So you can see a potential where we have a community group that has a lot of different individuals and they want to do a neighborhood competition, or people in a different city council areas can see what engagement is by their residents as well. So, yeah. And then, any other questions for me? Yeah, Joe.
Forgive me if I'm beating this to death. Just wanted to verify that my understanding is correct. The tracking that will happen on the site will only be related to the data provided by the participants of the site, and it will be independent of the city proper's activities with respect to the climate action plan?
So you can still register on the site. It's intended for City of Bloomington residents, but it's going to track exactly. So like when I showed you an action, it shows what the CO2 reduced associated with that action is. So if I'm Joe and I log in and I make an account and I've designated that I've taken action in that category, it will add up what the total impact of all the actions that you, Joe, have taken, and then that will add up to the aggregate progress right here. So
Got it. Okay.
you will count as a household, and but there's also a groups section as well. So if there was, Bloomington Commission on Sustainability wants to register, we'll have an active group, and all of those individuals can interface in that group as well. So there could be a situation working with the neighborhood associations or different neighborhood groups that we can get more activity in different areas of the city as well.
Splendid, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, there's so many questions for you on this.
Yeah, sure.
The actions that are encouraged to be taken, are those all supported with city prod programs? Are some of them supported by city programs? How does that work?
So for every action, and this is part of the site build out that I'm working on, there's going to be a Bloomington specific resources section. So while there's going to be a general area that talks about why is it important that you do this, generally, then you'll be able to go down and click on more resources to get involved. So for some of them, there will be a supporting city program, and for other ones, like for instance, if there's a free home assessment through the utility, then there will be a direct link for you to register for that. So if there's a rebate or another financial incentive, then we're providing the specific link to that. I'm also going to add a section at the bottom of the page that talks about what climate action plan goal it supports, just so that it's always connecting with the strategic plan as well. So there may not be a specific city program right now to support that, but we are building it out with resources so that it's not just informational, it's intended to be interactive. Yes.
Is there a quantitative metric that would incentivize the individual to engage in these categories? So maybe for under the water, how much it would save people, or maybe something that goes straight to the individual for their action?
Yeah, so for each one, there will be an estimate to possible monetary savings from taking action on that. And it's also customized, like for instance, it's program customized to our specific situation in terms of like carbon intensity of our grid here. So for some of the energy efficiency actions, it will show more points or more value in engaging in those versus another community that has a different emissions profile. So as we're trying to incentivize people to take the most impactful action, it kind of guides them towards choosing ones that will have the most difference here. That is more valuable than just having a list of sort of like what you can do, because that often overwhelms people. They're not really sure where to start. They're not sure which ones make more of a difference than others. But we're also trying to create a low barrier to entry by listing both easy things, and then you can kind of move on from there. So
almost like a credit score for your impact
yeah,
on the...
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, for instance, like combining trips, driving less often, gives a savings per year here, some points, and the points are based on impact, so more points is more impact, and then it shows it as easy. So these are just illustrative. Over time, we'll probably create more custom ones as well. And Patrick, when he comes to the commission, can also answer some of the questions that you might have about engagement strategies that they've used in other places to get people to sign up. So that will be part of a longer term effort to track and get people involved. So this also helps, like there's quite a lot of people that contact the city and say we're interested in doing something to support climate action. They're not really sure where to start. I think this will better aggregate and track that engagement in a more concrete fashion, because we can look at, you know, how many people engaged with an event, but then we're not really sure what they did as a result of that afterwards as well. So if there's not any other questions, then I'll probably go over to Matt for any updates that you have.
Sure. So for report from the council, pretty minimal updates in that regard. Since our last meeting, we had a Climate Action Resilience Committee meeting scheduled that needed to be canceled for some conflicts. So we're in the process of rescheduling that probably later this month. Lauren and I are in contact about that, and I'm checking times with committee members. So I know that was of interest to some commissioners. That would be our first meeting in 2022. The plan is to meet roughly quarterly to be able to dive a little bit deeper on council member questions, as well as the legislative components of the climate action plan. Second, I'll just note that I'm meeting with the chair of the Environmental Commission on Friday this week. Sam Armstrong is the newly elected chair. He'd reached out to me wanting to connect and just have a relationship with the council. I'd met with the Environmental Commission maybe a year ago, went and introduced myself and just kind of said hello to everyone in the context of, again, the Climate Action and Resilience Committee of the councils. So just wanted to note that, especially since we have Don on the call and Lauren shared an update about the recommendation with regards to EC and BCOS from the Novak report. Finally, just an announcement for commissioners and the public that, as I think a lot of folks know, net metering is coming to an end in the state for homeowner installed solar energy. I saw an update from folks with Siren that Duke Energy, our investor-owned utility, is requesting interconnection agreements by mid-April to guarantee that folks will be able to avail themselves to net metering. So if you're on the fence at all, now's the time to move. I don't think the install has to be completed by then, from my understanding, but the interconnection agreement needs to be signed to ensure that you get that in. So I just thought I'd share that, but that's all I have. There's no, I guess, one minor update from the council, well, not minor, but it's in the past, is the Catalent abatement that I mentioned in our last BCOS meeting was approved. That was a net present value $30 million tax abatement for Catalent, large local employer. That was discussed in our last and voted on our last regular session. No pending legislation that has substantial sustainability components, I don't think at the moment, but I'm happy to answer questions if folks have them.
Has the council discussed the idea of the recommendation of the merger of the commissions?
No, we haven't, at least not in any formal capacity. I don't think, there were some questions and answer, or sorry, yeah, Q&A like at the end of that presentation of the Novak report, but the way we handle and respond to reports from city offices is not generally a debate or discussion at the end, but really just a time for questions. So apart from that, we haven't engaged in any sort of formal discussion as a council body. I'm not sure of any plans for that. I haven't heard anything from the administration myself about next steps on implementing any recommendations from the committee, from the Novak report. I'm not quite sure how that would proceed. We could schedule special sessions for the city council to meet. If we had an administration committee still, that would be a pretty obvious body to handle this question. So I don't have much information to report. There's been no formal conversation yet, though I hope that's forthcoming. I hope we don't just see legislation show up in our packet one day. So that's my hope anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions for our council member? Moving on in the agenda to officer elections.
So because this is the first meeting of several people and the second meeting of other people, what I was going to do at this point in time is read the duties of each office, just so that people understand what they are, have the opportunity for any questions, and then nominations. Joe, yes?
Yeah, I do have a point of order. The bylaws as they stand now prior to amendments, since we haven't been able to approve that yet, indicate that the annual meeting and the officer elections are not in March. Is that problematic to holding the elections in this meeting? It seems to me that we would need to approve the amendment to the bylaws before holding elections at this meeting. Is that accurate? Anyone?
That's probably true. We could move down to that in the agenda, vote, and then come back if everyone's fine with that.
Yeah, in that case, I
Okay.
would move that we adjust the agenda so that we approve the Resolution 2201 amendment to the bylaws prior to performing the officer elections.
Okay, just give me a second to pull that up.
Would anyone second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Okay, it passed unanimously. So we're moving on to that part of the agenda.
So I'll make this a little bit larger, but it's also in your meeting packet. So and in your email too, if you have that open. But basically, the amendments which were discussed at the previous couple of meetings are as follows: that the monthly meeting is moved to March, which more closely reflects when the terms end. In the previous copy of the bylaws, it was in July, which is often in the middle of the year, which isn't typically the best when we need to continue to conduct business and people's terms have recently expired. And so that's the first revision, which is highlighted. The other is clarifying a point of quorum that has been a challenge when there are vacant seats, with an amendment that a quorum constitutes a majority of the currently filled seats on the commission for the purpose of conducting official business. As of today, we have enough people to vote on this, but if anyone has any questions about those two changes, now would be the time. Fourth time is the charm. So if we can have someone make a motion.
Yeah, I'll hear a motion to approve this resolution 2201 amendment.
Second.
Oh, I said I'll hear a motion.
I'm sorry. Well, so moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Okay, that passed unanimously.
Okay. Okay, so there are 4 office positions, and they have a variety of duties. Right now, if you're interested in serving in any of these, after we read the descriptions, you can either nominate yourself or someone can nominate you. And if someone nominates you, then it's your prerogative whether to accept that nomination. I would say that I can work with any of you on any concerns that you might have about time commitment. I would say it's not prohibitive for any of them, but the least amount of time commitment is related to being the treasurer, because there aren't that many fiscal matters that come in front of the commission. So the offices are chairperson. Right now, Nejla has been acting chair since Jarrett stepped off the commission. So the chairperson works with me to prepare the agenda for all the meetings, presides over the meetings, except if in the case of their absence, when they designate a vice chairperson. The chairperson distributes the agenda no less than 48 hours prior to a scheduled meeting. So because our meetings are on Tuesdays, that needs to go out by end of business on Friday. The chairperson, in coordination with other members, shall be responsible for organizing and submitting the commission's annual report, which we'll continue to talk about, hasn't happened during COVID. The vice chairperson shall serve as the chairperson in the absence of the chairperson and perform all duties that may be delegated, aid them on request, post notice of vacancies, and perform all other duties applicable as prescribed by parliamentary authority. In the absence of the secretary, the vice person shall serve or appoint a member to serve as secretary. So if the secretary is not present, then the vice chairperson will need to take the notes. So we haven't had anyone serving as secretary for a while, and but basically just helping the chairperson if they're absent, running the meeting, and taking notes if secretary is absent. Secretary will keep for every meeting written minutes in which the results of any vote are recorded, and when appropriate, specific findings of facts and conclusions. Right now, I'm taking notes, sort of. Duty of the treasurer. Treasurer shall facilitate the preparation of the annual budget and shall facilitate efforts of commission members to identify funding sources to execute strategic goals. So in the case that the commission decided to apply for a grant, the treasurer would help create a budget for that. in other situations, there's been purchases of very small numbers of supplies, and then they would work with me to identify funding for that. That's mostly what's involved. If anyone has any questions about any of those duties, let me know.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about the duties? Okay, then I will hear nominations for, I guess I'll start with, well, I'll just take nominations for any of the categories and we'll see how it goes.
I would like to express willingness to serve as potentially vice chair or co-chair. I don't think I have the capacity to serve as a full chair position, but if there's a member who would be willing to share in that position, I would be willing to fill the supporting role if so nominated.
Thank you, Joseph. Like, what? Can we go just down, why don't we just go down the row? Let's just do that. Is that okay? Can we start at this end? Is that okay, Matt? Sure. All right, let's just go down one at a time and everyone can say if they're interested in any of the positions. That might save us, that might be the more equitable way to do this.
This is my first meeting, and I am getting my feet wet, so I'm not interested.
At this time, I will not be nominating myself for a position.
Okay, I remain willing to serve in capacity for any positions except secretary because I'm not able to do some of those.
I guess now is as good a time as ever to let everyone know that I will be stepping down from the commission in either April or May, I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to be completing my graduate program and setting sail for the next, adventure. That said, if I can help with note-taking duties between now and then, I'm happy to serve as interim secretary. I'd be happy to. So.
I am not planning to nominate myself.
This is my first meeting, so I'm probably not going to nominate myself, but if we end up not finding a secretary, I'd be willing to serve in that position.
I did already speak on behalf of my stance, but I do want to add for anyone who's new to the commission or potentially reluctant to being chair that I have chaired another commission and that I would be willing to chair the first few of these meetings if we do a co-chair role so that we could train and exchange, and then you could pick it up later without being worried about having to undertake a new thing on your first or second meeting. We could arrange that so it's not an abrupt transition.
I think a first meeting is a great time to nominate yourself for a officer position. I would prefer not to serve in one of those roles, though I could do vice chair or treasurer if needed.
I'm willing to do secretary or treasurer or both, if need be.
I wish I could, but I don't have the time.
I would be willing to act as treasurer moving forward.
It sounds like we've got a few people willing to serve as treasurer, and at least I heard one person willing to serve as secretary. Two? Okay, thanks, Nolan. And several at least two or three I heard willing to serve as co-chair or vice chair and or co-chair. So maybe we should start there. So I would now like to hear nominations for anyone interested in serving as co-chair and or chair, vice chair specifically, I would like to hear those nominations in the chair capacity. So would you like to nominate yourself, Joseph, for any of those?
And Angela, what I think I'll do is nominate you as chair and myself as vice chair. And then if going forward, is it possible to go forward and change into a co-chair position? Let's see. I think I'll stick with the nomination for you as chair and myself as vice chair.
Second.
Vice chair. Wait, you said me as chair and you as vice chair?
Correct.
Would you be willing to work out like maybe sharing some of the duties?
If you are reluctant to accept the nomination as chair and vice chair, would you accept a nomination as co-chairs?
Yes, I would prefer co-chair, actually.
Very good. So nominated.
Second.
Great. Okay, then I will nominate myself as co-chair. And would anyone else like to make any nominations for chair or co-chair, vice chair positions?
I think we need to do a roll call vote on the co-chairs.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone else wanted
okay.
to volunteer
Sure.
for that,
Yeah.
or wanted to make nominations.
Lauren, can you put the descriptions back up? Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, the chairs basically run the meetings and help prepare the agenda with Lauren. Lauren does most of the agenda, though, at least in my experience recently.
Yeah, so for chairperson, this has sometimes been a shared co-chair situation where work with two people. Usually it's broken out that one co-chair helps with the pre-meeting stuff and then the other co-chair helps with facilitating the meeting. So in this case, if it was Najla and Joe, they could work out after the nomination how that would operationally work. We just need to make sure that we're meeting public meeting rules by having the agenda out.
Or you might alternate. It's really up to you to work out. It's just that co-chair implies more of an equal share, and chair, vice chair implies more like the chair mostly does it and the vice chair steps in as needed. Like I was vice chair, and when our chair went overseas for a spring term abroad, I became the acting chair. And then as co-chair, that would also happen. But you just share more of the duties as co-chair. Are you interested possibly in serving in that capacity?
If that question,
I was at, sorry, I don't know, what's your name?
Me, Emma.
Emma, yeah, sorry. Emma, are you interested in serving in the chair capacity in any way?
Not as chair, no, but I could do vice chair. Sorry, this is my second meeting too.
Yeah.
I don't want to step too far up, but.
Colin?
Point of order. Would it be possible to write up proposed motions and then nominations, maybe on the screen somewhere? I don't know, and then so that we can kind of visualize it, because right now it's a little unclear. That would be super appreciated. Thanks.
We have one nomination currently, and it's for Najla and Joe to be co-chairs.
And
I don't know that you're going to be able to see it if I put it on the screen, but I'll write it in giant font.
So in follow-up to Emma's comment, Joe, would you be interested in being chair if Emma were co-chair?
yes, I am able to serve in a co-chair capacity.
Or no, would you be interested in being chair if Emma was vice chair? Because I think that's what she said.
I would decline that nomination.
That's what I thought based on what you said the first time. Emma, are you interested in serving as co-chair?
No.
Okay. So it seems that Are there any more motions? I'll hear any other motions besides the one that Joseph and I have suggested. Should we take a vote on that then?
If there aren't any other nominations, you can take a vote on that. Roll call.
Yeah. Are there any other nominations for chair and/or co-chairs specifically at this time? Okay. Then let's take a vote. All in favor of
I think you need to make a motion.
a roll call?
A motion.
Oh, sorry.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for Najla and Joseph to be
Oh,
co-chairs.
that was a nomination. Okay.
I have a point of order.
Do you have a point of order?
I do have a point of order. I just confirmed that in Indiana State Code, Section 514-1.5-3.5, as amended by PL 154-216, Section 1, subsection F, all votes taken during a meeting under this section must be taken by roll call vote, and that pertains to virtual hybrid meetings. So I just want to make sure
Okay.
that all the meetings, or all the
Thanks,
votes are
Joseph.
still going to be roll call.
Okay,
I have a
so,
clarifying question.
Yeah, go
Sorry. Do we first need to decide whether we're going with the chair and vice chair format versus the two co-chairs? Because I feel like we have nominations under both formats, and I'm confused.
well, yeah, actually, I think the way we've done it in the past on Because is that we let whoever's interested in being chair, vice chair, and/or co-chair decide, right? We basically base it on whoever's interested and willing to serve and what they would prefer. And so, well, I mean, we could choose to do it that way. We could, I think we could, if we wanted to, as a group, we could decide, you know, Because only wants chair and vice chair, for example. But in the past, what we've done, and I think what's in our bylaws, is it's left open to whoever's serving in that capacity to decide.
I think since there were no nominations for chair, we can just proceed with the co-chair nomination and do a roll call vote. So if someone wants to make a nomination for the vote.
A motion.
Motion.
Yeah. And so I'd like to, Joseph, you have a point of order?
Nolan's motion is already on the floor to appoint Najla as co-secretary and Joseph, myself, as co-secretary.
Co-chairs.
My gosh, I'm sorry for making this worse. Yes, chair and co-chair.
You know, try to back out now.
Did anyone
Would
second
anyone
Nolan's
second
motion?
that motion?
Second.
Okay, let's take a roll call vote. We'll start on this end.
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to, let's do secretary next. There were a few people, I think, interested in secretary positions. I would now like to hear nominations for secretary.
Could I nominate a slate of Emma for vice chair, Sarah for secretary, and Dave for treasurer? I think that corresponds with what folks said they were willing to do and what might be the only combination possible.
If Emma's vice chair, then who's the chair?
You guys are co-chairs.
Joe and Najla were just voted as
Oh, I see,
co-chairs.
so we would have co-chairs and a vice chair. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we've never
We've got
done
her
that before.
back. Yeah, that's great.
But why, but I mean, the more the merrier. I'm not against that idea.
It creates extra resilience by way of redundancy.
Okay, so we have a motion for Emma as vice chair. What were the other two? Sorry.
Sarah as secretary and Dave as treasurer.
Sarah as secretary, Dave as treasurer. Would anyone like to make a motion or are there any other nominations for a slate or for individual people for different, yeah, Joseph?
Point of order, I just want to go back to the bylaws as they're written. The description of duties of co-chairs is that in the event that the commission elects two chairs instead of a chairperson and vice chairs, I just want to make sure that doesn't preclude having co-chairs and a vice chairperson. It's my understanding that co-chairs fill the role of chair and vice chair instead of in addition to vice chair. Would having a vice chair be incongruent with the bylaws?
I'm going to defer to Matt Flaherty because he's gone to law school.
I'll defer to our staff liaison because I haven't consulted that recently.
I think functionally, if we had 2 co-chairs and a vice chair, that might get confusing. So given that Nejla and Joe will act as co-chairs, then we should probably remove the vice chair position from the nomination slate.
Yeah. Without objection, I would remove that from the slate. Thanks for pointing that out, Joe.
All right, thanks for pointing that out, Joseph, and for settling it for us, Lauren. So we have a motion, or no, is it a nomination or a motion that's on the floor?
We have a current nomination by Matt for
Okay.
Sarah and David as secretary and treasurer.
And treasurer, okay. And so I would like to hear any other nominations for those positions. So we're only talking about secretary and treasurer right now. Any other nominations?
I feel like I'm constantly breaking Robert's rules, but I just want to clarify with Emma because I feel like we've gone around in circles. Would you like to be nominated for one of these positions? Because I'd be happy to nominate you.
I'm fine either way. I'm happy to observe and participate. But they got it, it's okay.
In the case that someone has to step down, then maybe Emma would consider filling their position.
Point of information, is the motion on the floor to nominate Emma as secretary and Dave as treasurer?
Motion on the floor was Sarah as secretary and Dave as treasurer.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So it's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously as well.
Conveniently, we now have a presentation about Robert's Rules of Order.
Perfectly planned. Who's leading the presentation?
By Joe.
Take it away, Joseph.
Yeah, I'll be taking that. I'll let Lauren get the slides displayed. I will start by mentioning that there was the discussion at the previous meeting, or several meetings ago, that this would be in the order of 15 minutes or so. 15 to 20 was what was discussed. I think what's maybe more practical is something closer to 15, given the amount of items still remaining on the agenda. So the content on the slides, I will say, contain probably 30 minutes worth of information. I will move through it faster than that. So just know that I'm intentionally cruising through things, and that fortunately you had the slides in advance. Hopefully you're able to reference them, and that we will be able to take this up in the future as well if there are further questions. So going forward from there, I will start with just kind of a layout of what we're going to be going through. It's just going to be an overview of what they are, a quick look at the options for application. There are formal and informal ways. We'll cover the 3 essential elements of Robert Rules that I think are the most applicable to this body and to be familiar with. And then we'll take a look at some potentially exercises if we have time. And then lastly, just recommendations for the content. So the first part will be, what is Robert's Rules? They are, as defined by Encyclopedia Britannica, the generally accepted parliamentary procedure as defined by Britannica is the generally accepted rules, precedents, and practices commonly employed in the governance of deliberative assemblies, which is what we are. So essentially, it's just a guide for how we do what we're doing. And Robert's Rules is a particular particular guide for parliamentary procedure. And the purpose, as defined by Robert's Rules itself, in quotes, the objective of Robert's Rules of Order is to assist an assembly to accomplish in the best possible manner the work for which it was designed. And that's done through 3 basic principles. The first is keeping business organized by taking things up one at a time. It is also by maintaining a fair, courteous environment and by ensuring that the minority is heard and that the majority rules. And I'll get back to the best possible manner part, which I put in italics myself. And then as a quick side note, Robert was an actual person. His name was Henry Robert Martin, and he was an engineer officer in the U.S. Army. He got involved in this because he was asked to hear or preside over a public meeting and realized that he had no idea how and that there wasn't any good guidance for doing so. So he made it, and that's what we're going to talk about. So there are two principal ways in which it can be applied, and that goes to the previous remark that I made about things being accomplished in the best possible manner. It doesn't have to be the strict, formal, 100% way that you see in municipal governments. And that's the formal version. And when it's done that way, members must request the floor from the chair. They must only address the chair and not each other. The chair always facilitates who speaks, and there's usually rounds of questions and not just open exchanges. And then motions are introduced for all discussion, and then deliberation follows, and not in the opposite order. Conventionally, we have the tendency to discuss items and then make a motion, whereas the formal way is the opposite. And motions must always be dealt with until they are resolved, either by reaching a decision or using another motion to dispose of the pending motion. So the informal way, just to contrast that, is that obtaining the floor is done just without direct acknowledgement from the chair, just by speaking and being respectful. You can exchange directly with other members. We still do generally adhere to allowing others to speak before speaking a second time, but it's not strictly necessary. And then we discuss as many rounds as we need to. And then basically the role of the chair is just to intervene on an as-needed basis. And I just listed a few cases there for example. This slide is just a head-to-head comparison, which I don't think we need to do during the live portion, but you can reference later if you're interested, because I think the more important parts to cover while we're together are the essential elements of Robert's Rules that we use the most in this body. And the first and the most important one is one that we know and are a little familiar with, and that is main motions. But a few of the things that I think are worth focusing on are first the phrasing of the motion, to make sure that it contains all of the pertinent information, including the who, what, where, and when, and wording it in the positive and not the negative. So it's problematic to make a vague or ambiguous motion because that just causes confusion. So an example is, I move that we form a subcommittee to host a table at this year's Whatever Fest on July 19, 20, whatever year, which contains all of the details relevant to that motion so that when you're voting on it, it's clear precisely what you're voting on. And to present a motion, it's done by first acquiring the floor, stating the motion, and then seeing if there's a second. And the verbiage is you say, I move that, or I move to, and not I motion. Move is used like a verb, so you just conjugate it accordingly. Another member has to second for it to be discussed. If it's seconded, it becomes the pending motion. If it's not taken up. So you can make a motion. If no one seconds, it just doesn't get discussed. If it is taken up and the motion is debatable, then the member who made the motion has the right to speak first. And then the rest of the discussion just takes place in rounds based on how we choose to adopt Robert's Rules, either formally or informally. And then lastly, the process of dealing with a motion ends with a statement of conclusion, which is called by Robert's Rules completing the action, where an officer announces the result of the vote and states what will take place as a result. So it's clear what's being moved, what everyone chooses to do, and then what's going to happen in the end. So to take up the point about motions from the previous section, you can make a motion that isn't set in stone. So if you're even not certain if everybody's going to be on board with it, you can open with a motion and then see if anyone seconds. If you don't even agree with a motion, but you want to take it up, you can second it. But if you don't second and no one does, it won't be taken up. So second, even if you disagree, but want to talk about the thing. And then also feel free to make a motion, even if you don't think people are going to agree with it right up front. It can be amended and discussed after making the motion rather than having to discuss it first to decide how you want to make the motion. And then that concludes main motions, but brings us to resolutions, which are pretty much the same thing as a main motion. They are just a formal version of a main motion, which is usually done because of the length, complexity, or importance of it. So it can also include a preamble, which is different from just a live main motion, and that is the set of whereas clauses that precede it to give it some context or to make a case for why it should be adopted. I just dropped in an example there that you can see where the resolution is essentially just a motion to do something with a little bit of formality and some context preceding it. And then the last type of essential element, which is a big one, is secondary motions. And these are motions that are used to help decide what to do with the main motion or how to get things done in the meeting. So when a main motion is taken up, it becomes the pending motion, but then if secondary motions come up, they become the immediately pending motion, which means that these need to be processed in the order in which they're received. So it basically is a queue of motions where you make it the immediate motion until you resolve it, and then you work backwards through the queue. They're divided into 3 main classes. And I put in brackets what their more descriptive name is, but their proper name is first subsidiary motions, which are used for disposing with or concluding a motion. The second group is privileged motions, which are related to the meeting and not the main motion itself. So these will all appear in examples in the next slide, so you can see sort of what they pertain to. And then the third type is incidental motions, which are all procedural related motions. So in terms of how to properly deal with things. I put as a subnote the characteristics. There are different attributes that each specific type of motion has. There's probably 20 different motions, and they all can be dealt with slightly differently. There's a link on this slide to actually consult the full table with Robert's rules, but we won't go into that for now. So the next set of slides is just each category of motions, starting with subsidiary. I'll just read through them quickly just to give them all time to be seen. It's laying on the table to set things aside. Previous question means stop debate. And question just means what the motion applies to. So it's what you're voting yes or no to. That's what's referred to as the question. So if you call for the previous question, that means let's answer the question, let's cast a vote, let's stop debate. You can limit or extend the limits of debate. You can postpone to a certain time, which can even be a different meeting entirely. You can postpone the motion to next month's meeting. You can choose to refer it to a committee, to amend it, or to postpone it indefinitely if you don't want to discuss it and decide on it. And all of these things, again, are secondary motions, so they can be proposed towards any main motion to deal with that motion. The next group is, let's see, we should be on privileged. Yes, privileged motions, which again are related to the meeting and not the motion itself. So it's about fixing when you want to adjourn, actually adjourning, taking a recess, raising a question of privilege, which would be a case like you can't hear something, or there's background noise, or it's too hot, too cold, something that deals with the physical part of the meeting. That's, again, not the motion itself. And then calling for the orders of the day is to get back to the agenda if the meeting is wandering. And then the last group of the secondary motions is incidental, which are related to the procedure of the meeting. One that we know, and I think that is important to use, is the point of order. If there's something that you believe is against the rules, you can appeal if you disagree with the chair's ruling. Division of the assembly is in the case of a voice vote. If it's not clear what the outcome of the vote is, you can call for a different type of vote to make sure you have a count. But we won't be worrying about that here, since everything will be roll call votes. You can make requests and inquiries. So a point of information is a really good one. If you just need clarification on what's being discussed, you can interject with that at any time. You can also suspend the rules, which I've seen done for, in particular, with city council elections, if you want to make changes to how it's conducted according to the bylaws. You can temporarily suspend them for a specific situation. And then, let's see, object to consideration of a question. You can essentially state that you don't think a motion should be discussed. So that was the very, very quick version of all of the essential components of Robert's rules and how we use them. I think it would be worth discussing how we want to adopt them, to what extent of formality we want to use. I think it would be helpful for members to just get familiar with the preceding 3 slides that just listed the types of motions and how they can be used. I think that really covers all of the cases that we would have for them in here and gives some confidence in terms of what you can say and when and how it works. If we do have time and choose to, the next slide would be an example that we could go through where we basically pick a motion and we have people play roles and just step through it to see what it looks like. We could do that with formal application, informal application, and then there's a third example that has subsidiary, privileged, and incidental motion included in the same format, where essentially it sets up a scenario and then we play through it.
We have about 20 minutes left for the rest of the agenda items, so I would propose, if you're open to it, that we do the exercise at the next meeting, and this gives everyone an opportunity to look through the slides and prepare their questions, unless there's any specifically right now that people had about the slides that you just presented.
I think if you, Lauren, want to skip on forward to the next red slide after the green slides, there it is, recommendations. We can kind of get to the conclusion here. This is just further information on Robert's Rules that goes along to the potential for taking it up next time. There's 2 books that I strongly recommend, or at least one that I strongly recommend. That is Robert's Rules of Order Simplified and Applied, the first one. That's the one that I've used for putting this together and for all of the learning that I've done on parliamentary procedure. And then there's also the full, hard and fast Robert's Rules that's harder to digest. And both of those are available on the web, on the links opposite. And then I also recommend watching Bloomington City Council meetings, because I think they're an effective way to get a feel for the rhythm of how the meeting works. And it's a little bit like watching a volleyball match, where you kind of get accustomed to the process and you can even kind of anticipate what's going to happen next. So with that, one more slide for questions if you want to. If anyone has any questions that are relevant now that are quick to field.
Thanks, Joseph. Does anyone have any questions?
No questions, but I did just want to applaud you, Commissioner Wynja, for the great presentation. I'm the one who brought up this idea to have a training, and this definitely answers some of my questions, and I think it'll be a great resource going forward. Thank you also for always your due diligence in keeping us to code all the time. I think it's invaluable that we have someone on the commission who's just super on that. So,
thank you, Colin.
Yeah, I second those remarks.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no questions for Joseph, then we'll move on to the discussion of Compost Up Downtown program.
So I will probably just make an announcement, and then we can talk about this more in detail next meeting if we want to, given how much time we have left. But I did want to make an announcement, and I can share it on your screen. But if you go to bloomington.in.gov/sustainability, scroll down, click here. Had the informational webinar with Earth Keepers yesterday for a new program. I've alluded to the fact that we will be launching a new program for a couple of months, but it's now live. The focus of the program is downtown restaurants. Through this program, City of Bloomington will be able to support 16 restaurants and retail food establishments beginning composting service. It's a 3-month trial. Through the program, you will receive a waste audit, assistance setting up composting collections, training, and 3 months of compost collection. And restaurants will participate in a cohort of 4. So if you know anyone that runs a restaurant, just want to encourage people to participate. And the idea behind this program is that we have Climate Action Plan goals to increase diversion of waste, and a significant portion of what ends up being landfilled could be composted. And according to a study from the Monroe County Solid Waste District, restaurants and other large commercial generators account for a large proportion of that. And so that is the focus, and the focus is on downtown, in part because of increased visibility for visitors, as well as the concentration of restaurants in that area. So the idea is if we can get 16 restaurants composting in the same area. That also helps with collection efficiency as well through Earth Keepers. So those who continue service will get discounted quotes for continuing. And there's more information on this web page, applications on the bottom. I will also be going to the Kirkwood Business Owners meeting on Thursday and be working with Earth Keepers to recruit people for participating. So looking forward to providing updates about how this is going at future meetings, but if anyone has any questions about this, I can answer those as well. Joe.
Yeah, it mentions on the page that the webinar will be recorded and available after March 7th. Is that going to be posted on this page?
Yeah, so it is recorded. I just need to get it onto YouTube.
Perfect. And I do have one more question, but I'll wait for others if there are. Okay. Is the city doing any outreach for this in addition to this page? You said you were going to work with downtown partners?
Yeah, so there's been a program announcement sent out to the information that I had for businesses in the downtown area. I will also be going to working with Downtown Bloomington Inc. as well as the Chamber of Commerce to promote it to their membership. In addition to that, I'm expecting a press release to go out in the morning. If we do not have a sufficient number of applicants at that point in time, there will be a more targeted outreach ongoing. So we've got paper applications and really just wanting to work to address anyone's questions that they might have before participating. But it's a pretty good way to deal with any technical barriers or training barriers that anyone may have about starting service. And the waste audit in particular can identify ways for businesses to save money by reducing their food waste that is essentially lost revenue for them. So the cost of continuing service will be offset ideally by reduced waste from additional food that they may not have a lot of visibility into.
Excellent, thank you.
Lucia?
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So any restaurant can register on the website now? Like if they want to participate, can they register?
Yeah, so they just have to send me, at the bottom there's an attachment. If they're wondering if they're part of the area, I've got a map here. So this is a map of the Bloomington Entertainment Center in our district, which is the majority of downtown. There's 100 restaurants in that area. If they're wondering if they're eligible, they can email me as well. Application here, and then we've just got a flow chart illustrating the steps. But basically just ask questions, fill out the form, and then if we have more interest than availability, then we'll try to match accordingly.
Any other questions for Lauren on the Compost Up program? Great, thank you, Lauren, for that update. And now we have just about 10 minutes left, and we have 3 things left on our agenda. I would like to see if anyone would like to make a motion to extend our meeting time from ending at 7:30 to ending at 8 o'clock so that we can have enough time to discuss what's left on our agenda. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Is there anything that could be moved to the next meeting?
Well, the things that are on there that I know of need to be discussed in this meeting. The Housing First resolution and the Anti-Semitism resolution both need to be discussed this meeting.
I would move that we extend the meeting for 10 minutes and see how much time remains or how much progress we're able to make on the discussion in that time.
Second.
All in favor, I say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Okay. So thank you for that. So moving on to discussion of the Because Housing First Resolution version 2. So this is my item, and I authored the first Because Housing First resolution that passed last February, and which is on the Because website, linked. And since then, I've been working with other commissioners in working groups, but doing a lot of community outreach and research as well on my own on this issue to follow up, both to follow up the progress of the city in meeting the recommendations that we made, and to keep my ear to the ground on the issue on what the needs may be of our community in this area. And I think that because should hear a second housing, or a version 2 for this year of the Housing First resolution, and I think it should be discussed and passed before we do the annual report in May, so that whatever recommendations are given can be properly budgeted for in the city's budget. And I'd like to ask others on the commission. I've been working we had the policy working group, which has sort of fallen off, and then I moved this housing topic into the Just Transition Working Group, and we're definitely going to be discussing that issue in the event and using whatever information that we hear to inform this Housing First Resolution version 2. And I would like to ask if anyone else on BCAUS, including and especially new members, are interested in housing and would like to kind of work with me more closely on this in preparing this resolution version 2 over the next few weeks and months. Possibly consider being a co-submitter of the resolution.
Is there a scheduled working group meeting that is planned?
Do we need to have a working group to?
Well, it might be
co-author
easier
a
for people to
resolution?
anticipate what the time commitment would be.
There is not currently a working group for it.
Okay.
I'll just say that I think housing is a climate justice issue, and that I really support the rewrite of the resolution. I don't know if I'll be a commissioner still when you go to try and pass it, but I support it, and I'd be happy to take a look to help draft, but I don't have much capacity between now and May.
Thanks, Colin. Is anyone else interested in being included on the drafting of that resolution? Okay, well, if you decide you are later, feel free to email too. Okay, yeah.
If you're looking for a copy of the other resolution, it can be found, like Najla mentioned, on bloomington.in.gov/board/sustainability. So you can go down here, click on it, check it out, and if you have questions, email Najla or connect about a potential second resolution.
Yeah, but I do plan to try to prepare that and have it ready for discussion, hopefully in our April meeting, and then I guess a vote in our May meeting, just kind of a heads up on that. Okay, great. Thanks, Colin. And thanks everyone else for your support. Moving on to we've already done the resolution we voted on the resolution 2201. Moving on to report on the Just Transition event. Who would like to speak on that, Alicia or Colin?
I think it's next week, so it's the last push here. So if anybody has, can share out the event on Facebook or anything like that, I think it's the last week. Do we still have 40 plus people registered? Pretty good. But yeah.
And the Facebook event is on the City of Bloomington, or is it the sustainability page?
Yeah, so if you're interested in registering for the event, if you go to bloomington.in.gov/sustainability, it's listed on the page, addressing the climate crisis, moving towards a just transition for Bloomington. Click on it. It auto-directs to this page. And then down here it says, how are you attending this event? Choose either virtually or in person. If you're attending virtually, it would be via Zoom. If you were attending in person, it would be at Monroe County Public Library Auditorium. And so we will have a combination of both, depending on people's preference. There's also some questions as well to prepare, and the guest speakers we will have some guest speakers to speak to the potential consideration of having a racial equity impact assessment completed for the city of Bloomington, which will help for the equitable implementation of the climate action plan. So the goal of the event is to hear from the public. So while there will be a public presentation, it's more of a listening session, town hall, with residents and anyone that attends about their concerns around climate change and equity in Bloomington. And it's intended that this event is the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of it. So there's a potential later in the year to hold other listening sessions with the public. So it will be the first hybrid event that the commission's holding. It's held off-site at the public library to try to create an opportunity for more people to participate. And if anyone has questions, then they can contact me. Our registrations have increased. There's a Facebook event, a part of the Sustainable Bloomington page. So if you know anyone that you would like to invite, you can also on the sustainability page, click on this Facebook. It redirects to Facebook/SustainableBtown, and then under events, it's listed. So we have a good number of registrants, and I'm looking forward to seeing anyone that's able to come. It will also be recorded, so have that. And we'll be doing debriefs with the guest speakers to talk about next steps for the commission. So at the April meeting, we'll have some takeaways to share with the group.
Anything more to add? Alicia? Colin? Okay. Any questions about that event or any other comments? All right, moving on to the resolution. Oh, this is my item as well. I currently serve on one other city commission. It's called the Community Advisory for Public Safety. That's CAPS. And that committee is going to be hearing and voting on a resolution 2201 condemning anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence. And that was included in the packet. Has everyone had a chance to read it? And does anyone have any questions about that? And I just wanted to make a short pitch that I think social equity and social justice are important to the sustainability of our community. That's why I'm asking BCause to sponsor the resolution. So that would put the BCause Commission on the list of sponsors. Does anyone have any questions about that or comments?
I can read the resolution summary for everyone. I'm not going to read the entire text, but for anyone that may be on Zoom or on CATS. So it says Resolution 2201 condemning anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence. It will be going in front of the Community Advisory on Public Safety Commission, and Nejla is asking that the Commission on Sustainability sponsor the resolution. So the summary says, in response to past and recent acts of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence in our community, this resolution condemns anti-Semitism and acts of anti-Jewish bigotry as morally reprehensible in themselves, as well as serious threats to public safety, and it denounces the anti-Semitic sentiments that give rise to such acts as false, hateful, and antithetical to core American values. The full text is in the packet if anyone's looking for it.
Comments or questions? Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
had a question. Thank you, Commissioner Ritzong, for your work on this and sharing it in the packet. I wanted to follow up about an email I'd gotten on the council from Rabbi Levi Kunin about including or not the definition of anti-Semitism as defined by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And it seemed like from your citations, in particular number 6, that you'd had some ongoing conversations with professors and folks at IU in the Jewish community in particular. I'm trying to find the citation at the moment. Professor Alvin Rosenfield, who is the Irving M. Glazer Chair in Jewish Studies and Director of the Institute for Study of Contemporary Anti-Semitism at Indiana University. I was wondering if you could speak to that issue anymore and the decision whether to include the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism or not, or what. I wasn't really clear on what the background or context was. I just had that note from Rabbi Kunin and wanted to ask your thoughts.
Yeah, so in preparing this resolution, me and a couple other members of the commission performed community outreach and research on this subject with many members of the Jewish community, including some people at the Anti-Semitism Institute and several rabbis. And what we found was that there are contingents in our community of people who feel very strongly about there are at least 2 different definitions of anti-Semitism that are widely used and recognized, and that we do have community members who feel very strongly that one of them is the only one that should be used, and there are community members who feel very strongly that the other definitions are better for whatever reasons or more accurate. And in my consultations, particularly with, I want to keep the people confidential, but in my consultations with people who are global leading experts in anti-Semitism, it was recommended to me that for the purposes of this resolution, the most inclusive approach might be not to have any definition cited. And so that's the approach that we took. That's the approach the commission decided on. In order to not create division with a resolution that's supposed to be inclusive and helping our community to feel safer, we decided that to follow the advice of this person who is a global expert in anti-Semitism, who recommended not having a definition.
Thank you. Could I ask a follow-up question or two?
Yes.
I had mentioned the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which I guess is a working definition, they call it, that the Department of State had been using. Do you know what the other major definition or competing sort of definition?
Yes, it's the other one is the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism.
Okay.
And you'll find it online very easily. And there are people, well, I'll just say that there are people in our community who are scholars and experts of Jewish studies who feel very strongly in these different camps that I spoke with.
I appreciate that. And some of the folks who'd reached out concerned about, like, did a previous version of this resolution include a definition, and the choice of a definition upset sort of one camp? Is that
No, actually, so
no?
the first draft of the resolution that was circulated is this one.
Mm-hmm.
But in my research and community outreach, I did send other possible, drafts that I was considering, but the official first draft that was decided to be, promoted and circulated by the committee to the community is this.
Okay, and I guess my concern and what I'm trying to understand fully is, are there folks in the Jewish community who would find this resolution offensive? Because I don't feel in a position to be able to vote on a resolution that would do that, or feel strongly like I have the knowledge about definitions. So knowing that this was an issue that someone raised, do you have any insight or perspective on some of the folks who were concerned about either this draft or some draft of the resolution, and whether...
I can't speak to whether someone would find it offensive, but I definitely would say that there are people in our Jewish community who would choose not to endorse it because it doesn't include the particular definition that they feel is the best one. And I would also say that there are people in our community who wouldn't have endorsed it if that had been the choice made. And I will say that there are people in the community who will endorse it either way.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
One comment. I am Jewish, born and raised here in Bloomington, and you're not going to get all Jews to agree on one single thing. So I'm happy. I personally am happy with this, but I've been on enough committees at Beth Shalom to realize you're just not going to get everybody buying in on one thing most of the time.
Did that answer your question, Matt?
I appreciate
Did I
the
answer-
additional context. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Matt?
great. Thanks for your comment, Matt.
And thank you for all your work on this.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments on this? How are we doing on time?
3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, Joseph?
Yeah, I would just like to ask what the implication or consequence of BCO sponsorship of this would be.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's no, as far as I know, there's no kind of like legal obligation that BCAUS would have after deciding to sponsor this resolution. If BCAUS decides to sponsor it, it says that our commission agrees with the sentiments as expressed in this resolution, is what it says. As far as I know, and there's no further obligations.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I might as well go. Well, as a person who doesn't identify as Jewish but has Jewish heritage, a few of my ancestors were murdered in the Holocaust. And what else? Oh yeah, as a supporter of the boycott, divest, and sanction movement as well, and an anti-imperialist, I personally support this resolution. I think it's outstanding, and I thank you, Najla, for all your hard work on it. So I'll be supporting it today.
Thanks, Colin. Yeah.
I would like to comment. I think it's a necessary thing. I'm a Jewish student at IU currently. But it's one thing to write the words down, but it's another thing to encourage the sentiment. It's hard. I think it's hard to, deal with these things as they come up, and it's good that the Jewish community sees support, but sometimes for me, these words ring hollow when it happens continuously. So I would just encourage you to also expand on this and encouraging positive sentiment towards Jewish communities as well, not only through words, but actions, which I see are written there as well. So that was something that I would keep in mind.
Thanks. And you're Sarah? And also, I wanted to let you know, Sarah, in the CAPS Commission, that I'm on a committee there, and we are considering following this up with another resolution that may be asking for more actions based on this one. So if that's something you have more ideas on, I'd be happy to reach out to you once we do that. Great, thanks for your comment.
I did want to say that it is now 7:40, so I think either if people feel comfortable making a motion, or the decision needs to be made about whether to vote on the sponsorship at the next meeting.
I'll make a motion for the BCOS to support this resolution.
Sponsor it.
Sponsor it, sorry, thank you.
Second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Point of order. I was just double checking this is first reading of this resolution, right?
It's a sponsorship, but yes.
Oh, so we aren't passing this resolution.
No.
We are choosing to sponsor the
Yeah,
resolution.
so it's going in front of the Commission on Public Safety to pass it, or we would just
Got
at the
it.
bottom it would say sponsored by Bloomington Commission on Sustainability on March 8th.
Got it. Okay, before we hold about it, I'm actually going to vote no, not because I don't agree with the sentiment, because I don't actually feel well enough equipped to make a decision. Having had folks from the Jewish community express concern to me about this resolution previously without consulting them first, I don't feel comfortable voting on it without more due diligence with regards to information. So that's my explanation on that. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And so continuing with our vote.
It would just need to be roll call.
Okay, roll call vote. So we'll start at this end.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Oh, no.
Yes.
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 Okay, so that passes unanimously because we'll sponsor the,
Not unanimously.
sorry, not unanimously. Yeah, sorry.
911.
Councilmember Matt, it passed and,
Nine yeses, 1 abstention, 1 no.
okay. Who was the abstention?
Joe.
Okay. And then moving on, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye.